Hello and welcome to Knowledge by Nature. In today's video, I'm going to be giving you a comparison of Dimensions Math Teacher's Guide and Dimensions Math Home Instructor's Guide. Now, I know if you are like me, you may be struggling to figure out which one of these are the best fit for you, and I'm hoping this comparison can help you. Now, I have always been a user of the Teacher's Guide. I've always bought the Teacher's Guide, but recently I was speaking with Singapore Math and they sent me the Home Instructor's Guide at no cost so that I could show you a comparison of the two. Now, as I said, I bought the Teacher's Guide, but they sent me this Home Instructor's Guide so that I could give you a good view of how these two compare. Now, we have been Singapore Math users for about 5 years now, so we actually really love this program, and I don't think that you can probably go wrong with either one of these. It's just a personal preference more than anything, and I'm just going to show you some of the things why you might prefer one over the other. I do have a whole Singapore Math playlist that I will put down below, so be sure and check that out if you are interested in that. Now, before we get started, if this is your first time here, welcome or welcome back. I am a homeschool mom to a soon-to-be 5th grader. We love all things books, homeschool, and sharing our journey with you. And if that interests you, I would love if you consider hitting that subscribe button and give me a thumbs up if you enjoyed this video. So as I said, I've always been a Teacher's Guide user. For one, when we first started using Singapore Math, there wasn't this option to have a Home Instructor's Guide. They hadn't released this yet, so this was what you got. That could be one of the reasons that I'll just go ahead and let you know that I favor the Teacher's Guide. But that doesn't mean that it is better for everybody. So that is why I want to do that. Now, one of the biggest factors for the Home Instructor's Guide is the size. I mean, I love the size of the Home Instructor's Guide. I love how small it is and how easy it is to put on my homeschool cart or honestly do anything with. You can see it is a ginormous difference in size. So here is the Teacher's Guide, which is really just maybe a 2-subject notebook size, something like that, where we've got this beefy Teacher's Guide here. It's got this hard, really thick card back, and then this is just a really thick cardstock on front and back, but you have a big cardboard board on this one. So luckily it does have that strong, so it does stand up in my cart because of that, but you have this big spiral. So our first huge difference is the sizing, for sure. There's no getting around it. Now, the Home Instructor's Guide is honestly about the size of the workbook. So you can see here's the workbook and the textbook. That's pretty much the same size. So if you have the workbook or the textbook or the test book, it's pretty much the same size, so you know the difference. Here we put the workbook on top of that, and you can see the difference of that. It's not a lot different when you look at it like this, but it definitely is much larger. Now, what I'm going to try to do is just have one on the top here and one on the bottom, just to kind of be able to give you as much comparison as possible. Another huge difference is the Home Instructor's Guide is going to be all black and white. Okay, there is no color in this thing. And your Dimensions Math is going to have lots of color. The pages are going to be colored. You're going to have those colored student pages. They're going to be color-coded for their chapters. Lots of colors. Colors aren't your thing? This could be great for you. Some people may feel really overwhelmed with all the brightness and the colors. Let's go ahead and come to our contents. We have this little preface where it's telling you this is made for you. This is for the parent. This is for the tutor that is teaching the student at home in a private setting. So it just kind of gives you a little walkthrough on using this, how to be flexible, things like that. And then we have this scheme of work here. Now, our scheme of work, you're going to find at the very beginning of the Teacher's Guide, but in the home... I just misspoke, actually. The scheme of work in the Home Instructor's Guide, you are going to find at the very beginning of the book, where the scheme of work in the teacher's guide, and I hope I don't mix these up too much, but just know the big one is the teacher's guide, the small one is the home instructor's guide. So the teacher's guide, you're going to find this like scheme of work here at the beginning of each chapter. So instead of having everything here at once, you're going to actually have them mixed with every chapter. So for chapter 10, you will see your scheme of work where it shows you the lesson that you're going to be working on. It's going to show you the lesson that you work on, the page that you will find that lesson on, and your resources. So TB is your textbook, WB is your workbook, and then you can see our workbook solutions are at the very, very bottom right here on page 32. Then you have a quick objective on the very, very far side here telling you what each of these lessons are going to be talking about. And we also have suggested number of class periods, 9 to 10, that can be found at the front of each chapter in the teacher's guide. When we come and we look at this in the home instructor's guide, we can see chapter 10, it has a week here. So in week 1, you might do the chapter opener, lesson 1, lesson 2, lesson 3. Again, we have our textbook pages, our workbook pages, and the guide. So the guide is this right here. So we have pages 1 through 6 is going to be talking about our opening of the measurements. Then we have our chapter opener where you will find it on page 7 and 8. So this is like your table of contents for your page numbers as well as your scheme of work. Week 2, if you stayed on this schedule, would be you would do lesson 4, lesson 5, lesson 6, lesson 7. And that's how all of that works. You come down right here and you can see that we have Dimensions Math Test 4B, chapter 10, pages 1 through 12. So we'll look at that a little closer also. And that has the entire book, again, all right here at the beginning. Now let's come back over here to the teacher's guide for a moment and come back to the front of the teacher's guide. At the front of the teacher's guide, we have the contents only of the chapters. So we're seeing what all of the lessons are going to be in the chapters, and it will tell you what pages to find those on. Again, this is where we're finding some of those color coding. If I zoom in for you, you can see that addition and subtraction of decimals is green. If you start looking through here, if you can find the green, that is going to be that chapter, which is just another quick, easy way to find what you're looking for. Has all of the lessons here with the resources of your Blackline Masters, and then it talks a little bit about the Dimensions curriculum and the framework of Singapore math here. Just real quickly, let's go ahead and look at the materials here. Now, all of the materials are actually going to be listed again in the teacher's guide at the beginning of the chapter. So you will go to the beginning of the chapter and you will find all of the materials that you're going to need versus a whole page that has it all. So you can see these are all the materials that you're going to need for this book. These are the optional things you'll need for this book. There are free downloadable printables for the mental math sheets that you can find here, which is slightly different from the Blackline Masters that we see over here in our resources. But they're just in a different file folder. There's different printables, which again are those Blackline Masters, but they call them the Home Instructor Guide printouts. And these are the things that you're gonna need for those lessons. Here is telling you about the textbook, the chapter opener, the think section, the learn section, the do, the practice, and the review. And we're gonna see something very, very similar over here, where they're kind of talking about that here. We're talking about all the textbook, the workbook, and then how to use this teacher guide. So we have this chapter opener, activities, brainworks, all the little icons that you're gonna need to know as far as circle, triangle, and star, and the little book. So there's just different things for each book. So it tells you a little bit of notes about each of those guides, where we continue to talk about the workbook, the basics, the check, the test. So it does kind of help you with different things as far as that goes, what the mental math sheets are, and when you're going to be using those, talking about transitioning to different levels, and just a little bit of extra information that you might not normally get. All right, one more thing that you're going to get in your teacher's guide is the scope and sequence that starts with pre-K and it walks all the way through to 4B, I believe. Oh no, actually 5B. So that's nice. You can kind of see what's coming in the next level if that's something you're interested in, or you can even look back and be like, oh, well, they actually covered area and perimeter in 3B. Things like that. I have found this very handy sometimes, especially if I'm like mid 4A, 4B, and I want to know what 4B has, and I maybe happen to be in 4A, something like that. I have personally used that quite a bit when I am looking at the scope and sequences. And then let's get to our first chapter here. So we're looking at chapter 10. I'm actually going to run us over to chapter 12 because that is something that I have recently used, and so it just seems easier to show you. All right, with your home instructor's guide, you can see here that on this page over here we have chapter 11 workbook answers, and then we start with chapter 12 decimals. However, in your teacher's guide, you see that we have a page of notes. You could either use this for chapter 11 or you could use something for chapter 12, however you wanted to use that. But then we have the beginning section of chapter 12 over here. So you do get an extra notes page in the teacher's guide that you don't get in the home instructor's guide. Here we are looking at our lesson chapters. Now the lessons are going to be the same, so you don't have to worry about that. The lessons are identical. You have the same lesson coverage for your home instructor's guide as you do your teacher's guide because you're using the same workbook, the same textbook, and the same test book. Okay, so the only difference is the way that it is presented to you as the teacher. It should be pretty much the same being presented to your student. There is a few little things as far as games that are different, but for the most part, the actual teaching method, it's the same. So we can see everything broken out here. This is where it's saying right up here at the top, I don't know if you can see, but for chapter 12, it's recommending that our suggested number of classes for this is going to be 10 to 11 days of learning. We don't have that here, but it does talk about the scheduling at the beginning. Remember when we looked at our kind of scope and sequence over here, where let's see what chapter 12 would have been in part of week 5, and so part of week 5, 6, and 7 is how they have it broken out there. So that's just a little bit different. Let's go ahead and turn the page. So for the most part, you're getting the same information. It's just not in the same place. As far as like your materials for your home instructor's guide, you're going to see the materials that you need, which this is going to be like a place value chart, an optional ribbon or strip of piece of paper, and the printouts for lesson 12.8, 12.9, and place value cards. Now, if we jump over here to the teacher's guide and we go to the materials section, you can see these are the items that they are recommending that we have. These are the black line masters that they are recommending that we have, and the activities. The activities and the games is where I feel like the teacher's guide really, really shines. And here is where they are teaching you to teach decimals, okay? So you, the homeschool parent, this is wrote maybe a little bit clearer or different to a parent as opposed to if it was a public school teacher, because that's what this book is for. So you could definitely pause this and have kind of a side-by-side of these two things. So first we're going to look at this one closely, and then you can see we come back over here to another page where we're talking about converting between fractions and decimals, comparing decimals, rounding decimals, and a game. So it tells you when to play that game, and that is right there. A few more notes as we open to our chapter opener. So this is telling you the chapter opener. I almost will always do chapter opener and lesson 1 at the same time. Now let's look at the teacher's guide, all the notes. So you can see that one, we're getting visuals with our teaching notes. We have representing decimals, understanding decimals as fractions with denominators. So if you look back over here, we have all the decimal verbiage up here. And then we have converting between fractions and decimals. We have comparing and rounding. Again, we have all of these visuals. And then we jump over here to where we are seeing our black line masters, which we saw here at the beginning. So while all of the information is going to be very, very similar, it's just presented in a different way, definitely visually in a different way. I feel like this is very text heavy, where it has a lot of text, but it also has this visual broken up into there. So if you are a visual learner, this teacher's guide could be very helpful for you to actually see the things that they're talking about more. Now let's go to our chapter opener here. And I'm gonna fold this in half so that we can see our chapter opener. So a lot of times with a chapter opener, you might have an activity. Here's one of those little symbols. This over here is just talking about the chapter opener, and it says that it is meant to give students an idea of what they will be learning. You do not need to spend a lot of time on it. That's really, really helpful when you're first learning it, because you're like, what do I need to be doing here? So there are some things in here that I do really, really appreciate as a parent, knowing, oh, okay, I don't have to do all of this. I have somewhat learned this at this point, 5 years later, but also I had to go through a lot of learning in order to understand that not everything needed to be covered. So that is a pro for this, is that it does kind of help you, like, hey, you don't need a lot of time on this. But maybe you already know that. You will see for the chapter opener here, there's no image or anything. This is my favorite part of the teacher's guide, is that I get a picture of the student book. So she can be sitting right across from me using her book, and I can see what she is seeing. Super, super helpful for teaching it for myself. But again, if that's unnecessary for you, then this is another possible good fit for you. Now we will go over into lesson 1, where we are talking about tense. And lesson 1 is tense part 1. Let's look here. Tense part 1, pages 60 to 65. And that is where we will find page 60 of their student book. I don't know if you can see that, but that is referring to the pages of the student textbook right there. Here is the teaching section of the Home Instructor's Guide. So we do have a little bit of our visual here, but nothing in comparison to what we're going to get up here. It talks about the think section, which is this little section of verbiage that you see right up here. And then you see the learn section, which this is where we get a little bit more information on our teacher's guide versus you got quite a bit of information for the think section. Move over here to the learn section, and that is where that stops. And then we will move on to the do section. So this next page continued with our learn section here, more images of the textbook, and then we come to the do section, which we see again the do section of the workbook. All of this, we have an activity and our exercise. Let's jump back to lesson 1 over here, where we jumped to our do section, and then that's all we have. So there is no activity that I'm seeing there. Jumping back to the teacher's guide just really quickly. So we have our think, we have all of our learn, we have our lesson 1 pages here. This is just saying, suggest to students that we need a new place, and that's something you can do for them. Here it's talking about the D part of the learn, and then we come over here to the do section. Do section, and then it jumps to the activities. So for this lesson in the teacher's guide, we have an activity for Go Fish for cards, and this is BLM Blackline Masters. That's a free printable that you can get. It tells you how to play it, and these are great ways to practice what you're learning. In your teacher's book here, you have exercise 1, page 49, and that is referring to your workbook page. Let's go back to our lesson 1. We have all of this information for think. Again, pause this, kind of take a comparison of the two if you need to. Then we move on to learn. This is all of your learn section. And then this is any notes that you will need for your do section. Now this little box right here is all of the answers to the textbook that you actually have as part of the image over here. So if you see right here, this zoomed up section, we have number 5A, it has the picture, and in red is the answer. So you don't have just a separate page of all of the answers, you have the answers within the pages over here. So the answers to this page are here, the answer to this page is on here, and so on. In the Home Instructor's Guide, I do not see where it tells you where the next workbook page is on this. Now, if you go back to the very front, you will see that chapter 12, number 1, your workbook would be 49 and 51. So where this tells me right here in the teacher's guide that exercise 1, I could just be like, okay, go to page 49. She's gonna see that in the textbook. I'm gonna have it right here. And then in this, you just don't get that prompt there. You would have to come back and look. So that's another minor difference on just quickly being able to say, hey, go to this exercise. Now, your student has workbook pages as part of Dimensions Math, which tells you to go here. Now, the answers for those you will find at the back of the chapter. So if you go to the back of chapter 12 in your teacher's guide, I will go to right here, exercise 1, and I have an image of the worksheets that she's going to be doing in the workbook with, again, all of the answers in red. So I can see it's a visual, it's right there. I know exactly what problem she's looking at. When we are looking for those answers in the Home Instructor's Guide, we're going to, again, go to the back of the chapter, and this is where we will find all of the answers. So they're just listed here in this column. You can just quickly look, but if you wouldn't be able to be sitting across from them and see exactly what they're talking about. So right here, we're complete the table, and we can see the fraction of 1/10 is 0.1. Here's where they're figuring this out. So this would be 3/10. 0.3. Here we just see that the answer should be 3/10 and 0.3. Tells you what exercise that is on. That is another way that you could jump over to the back and see what pages she would need, what pages your student would need to go on. So you could either go to the front to find your workbook page if you needed, or you could jump to the back of that chapter and find. Now, if you happen to be looking at this in a younger age, something else that I find that is not part of the Home Instructor's Guide that would be part of the Teacher's Guide was book recommendations. So at the very beginning, when they're smaller, there's a lot of fun little books that you can read, and those are listed in the Teacher's Guide. There's a lot of games in here. There are not as many options. There are games, but there are just not very many. So let's jump to chapter 12 and see if I can find some activities here. So in chapter 12, we have after game, you're going to play materials with place value disc, you're going to compare decimals, and the goal is to get the most points. So it tells you how to do that, and then here's a variation. If there are more than 2 players, the number for each round are listed in order, okay? Now there is that game listed there. Let's see if there's any more activities that we can find through here. There don't appear to be any more activities in there, but there are these printouts here. I don't know exactly what 12.8 and 12.9 would be. It could be kind of a game thing. Let's look at that really quickly. So it says, have your student read the problem and find the answer. They can use the lesson 12.8 printout, shade the squares in to represent the numbers as shown in earlier lessons, and then see which has more little squares. So this is just another little printout worksheet thing, not so much a game. Now let's look at chapter 12 in our teacher's guide just to compare the activities and games that might be available. So it talks about the games and activities are provided in this chapter to get more practice and understanding of comparing decimals. The included activities can be used after students complete the do questions or anytime additional practice is needed. So it gives you a little walk around on how to do that. For our chapter opener, we had a little decimal hunt where you can get a newspaper and look through and see if you can find decimals. Then if we continue on, At the end of the chapter, we had our activity for Go Fish, and that's where you just print the black landmasters off, or a lot of times you can just use regular playing cards for a lot of the things. Here is an activity right here where you're using the playing cards to make the greatest number. We're going to lesson 3, where we have quite a few activities here. We have a match, a memory game, and a decimal battle. You can notice those little symbols there, which are the difficulties. If we go to lesson 4, we have an activity of a grab bag. Place value disc, hundredths to hundreds, in a brown paper bag. They grab a handful of discs from the bag and organize them into a number. So we use the activities a lot. We like the activities, and I would hate to be missing out on so many of these. I don't see anything for lesson 5 or lesson 6. Let's go on. Lesson 7 is a practice day, but we do have another activity. Some of these may be kind of similar to the ones that we had before. We have memory over here. We're moving on to lesson 8, where we have a hundredths battle. A lot of these you will maybe need to play with your student or have your child play with a student maybe, because a lot of times they are made for 2 or more, where some of these are made more for that one student. Let's go to lesson 9. Lesson 9 activity, we're playing 3 in a row. There's a little board that you can print off or make. Lesson 10 practice, we have a BrainWorks where you make kind of a hexagon activity. So again, I love the additional activities. For me, the visuals, seeing the pages is a huge hit. So I personally like the way this is presented more than this, but I also know that this could seem very overwhelming to some. It doesn't have quite as much guidance sometimes, as not all of this is necessary. Where here it does say, hey, you know what, you don't have to go into this super detailed, just make sure that they comprehend it, that sort of thing like that. So it really is honestly a personal preference, and for me that's the teacher's guide. I love the way it's presented. I love the color. I love the visuals. I like the way that the text is broken in with the visuals, where this, for me personally, is just a little text heavy and not as easily to use for me. But that is my personal opinion only, and I think this would work really, really well for many, many people. And there's also a price difference. This bigger book has a bigger price tag. This smaller book has a smaller price tag. So in these lower levels where you may not need a whole lot of guidance, but you just need the answers quick and easy, right here. This is what you need right here, the Home Instructor's Guide. You just want to be able to grade quickly by having all of the answers available for you. Save yourself some space and some money and get the Home Instructor's Guide. If you have really small ones, even if you don't need that extra help, I loved having the books and the extra games. There were so many fun books, so many fun activities in that kindergarten, first grade sort of thing. Go look at my playlist if you're interested in those lower levels. We will be using, spoiler alert, level 5, so I will have something on 5 pretty soon if you're looking at 5 also. But this is just a side-by-side comparison of these two. If you have any questions or comments, please let me know. Drop them down below. Send me a message over on Instagram. I will show you whatever I can to help you, because I know it can be a struggle to know which one is better. So please reach out if you have questions. I don't mind one bit to help you out. So give me a thumbs up if you enjoyed this video. Consider hitting that subscribe button, and I'll see you in my next one. Have a good day. Bye.